Well, she just came back from New Orleans not long ago, there during Halloween. And she got a cool pair. Oh, look at the sunglasses there.
Oh,
all right.
Pretty cool.
I guess I'll just show that out to everybody.
Oh, my
Definitely.
God. Okay, look this way.
They're very cool.
Right.
Janet, Kuypers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Oh, my God.
Butterfly eye.
I'll do it once here. It's actually, I looked at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's actually a bow. It's like there's a thing around it, like it just needs ribbons coming off of it or something. It's a bow. So hi, yeah, I always like to pick up glasses while I'm in the office. Anyway, I thought I would share 3 poems from this book, which is called A Year-Long Journey. For those who don't know me, I am a Chicagoan who moved here in 2015. And right before I moved, I had a collection of poems that were done in shows for the last year of my being in Chicago. It's an oil design painting of myself with a suitcase.
All right.
Yeah, that's all it is. And I'm walking away in the background. Anyway, but there are a bunch of...
Picture on the back.
Which is, yeah, because you don't see my face. That's why I say it's a nice picture on the back.
No. Wait, no.
Anyway,
Don't ask.
so there were things from a bunch of different shows. And at one point I was asked to feature on 2 days during the science fiction convention in Chicago at the Palmer House. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to have to go up with stuff. So I wrote pieces about Star Trek. And so I've picked out 3 pieces from 2 different shows for you. These first 2 are from the show Resistance is Futile. And this first poem, look at the tab for it, is called Red Matter. Try to understand everything about the universe. I dare you. Even the science geeks at the high-tech labs in the world can't even explain how matter can function the way it does in our universe. The only way they can explain it is by making up some invisible stuff and only guess its properties by seeing how it affects the materials around it. It sounds crazy, no? Well, you might be right, but at some point in the game, when you've done all of the research and experiments that you can think of, it's then that you start coming up with these theories. Like the Big Bang Theory, which when you look for more and more evidence to support their theory, which they've done, the Big Bang Theory starts to seem less and less like a theory. But it has to be a theory, and no one was ever actually there to see when the universe started. But those scientists geeks still collect more and more evidence. We start thinking of the Big Bang Theory, and probably the closest thing to be, would actually probably be the closest thing to be right, or to be the truth. Well, these scientists have been at it again. They plot their stars, galaxies, and they see everything speeding away. And then they think, wait a minute, even though gravity is weak, our universe shouldn't be flying apart. It makes no sense. So the only thing they can come up with as a theory to explain all of this is that there's some invisible matter driving everything apart. And one scientist happened to say the words, dark matter. And although the phrase makes absolutely no sense, it stuck. A bunch of things we can't explain. Let's lump that all into this elusive dark matter and dark energy. But what if this elusive darkness yielded something so red, fiery hot, that instead of making our universe fall apart, it crammed all of this energy into a black hole? Let's think of this. Let's come up with a term. Let's call this red stuff red matter. Ignite this stuff and watch it turn whatever it touches into a black hole. I mean, just one drop of this stuff would be enough to collapse a star or consume planets. You know, this might be a cool part of being a scientist. When you've learned all that you can with what technology you have to come up with theories and look for evidence to support the fantastic. You know, maybe this stuff was created by a species that we've never found, like intelligent Vulcan's race, maybe, who relied on logic to accomplish so much. Maybe it was created by this rare isotope called lithium. Let's call it decalithium. Oh, what? That sounds kind of cool. Why not? Let's make it up another one. And then this red matter would then be used to collapse a star, and anything that was about to go into it, and it'll instantly then just go, otherwise supernova. You could actually turn this quantum singularity into a black hole. You see, anything is possible when it comes to theories. So, like that Vulcan mind you imagine, logically, look for the solutions, and you'll be surprised at what you can discover. I have another strange one for you. You have to, I guess, know Star Trek stuff. This is called Eugene's Limit. Just read an article from the Daily Times of India newspaper that relayed the theory that an interstellar-style wormhole may exist in the Milky Way. That there's this quote-unquote teleporting tunnel that we could magically step through that would just pop us out somewhere else in the universe. But really, a wormhole is just a theory with a catchy little name that has absolutely no basis in reality. And no one's ever even found a static wormhole. Even Data and LaForge left the Tarzan wormhole after discovering that it was unstable, and it was so unstable they couldn't even use it. So, I guess Star Trek has to settle with going through beyond the speed of light with their precious little warp drive. And, you know, scientists have only now been able to finally figure out how to slow down the speed of light. Warning. Science content. Researchers say that applying a mask to an optical beam, which would then give it spatial structure, and that could reduce its speed an infinitesimally small amount from that beautiful constant of 299,782,458 meters per second. And this is all we've been able to do to try to slow down the speed of light. How are we even going to get to Eugene's limit of warp 10? You know, it's really cute from how we come up with these names for scientific discoveries. The Big Bang wasn't a bang when there was actually no atmosphere to allow sound to travel. Dark matter isn't dark at all. It's just a name some scientist said, and we could actually come up with something interesting. And then Eugene's limit. That's in honor of the next generation to Gene Roddenberry, who decided that warp drive couldn't go past 10. Just decided. Couldn't go past 10. That's Eugene's limit. Yeah, thanks to Gene Roddenberry. By the 24th century, infinite velocity was the unattainable warp factor 10. But wait a minute. Let me get back to the science here. Because when it comes to these science geeks who come up with these theories, like the Big Bang or dark matter, they try to bring Star Trek into the real world. They're trying dilithium now to try to increase speed for distance travel for future journeys to Mars. And I don't know how many years scientists have been trying to transport even an atom anywhere in the world. But, you know, with these scientists' minds out there, well, the writer Gene Roddenberry must have to come up with some warp drive limit. But when scientists are taking their cues from the Star Trek world, the sky may not be the limit any longer. This one is all sorts of things. This one's called Kinds of Interference. And actually, this is from the other show that was called Imzadi. So, like you guys care, but they're two different shows. It's called Kinds of Interference. Watched an episode of Star Trek recently where the Borg first transported one onto the bridge of the starship Enterprise, and Jean-Luc Picard was then abducted, transported to this cubicle Borg ship. And as soon as they realized that Captain Picard was taken, Commander Riker talked through their little comm badges to Chief O'Brien and asked, "O'Brien, can you beam him back?" And Miles O'Brien responded that he can't, that there is some kind of interference. All O'Brien says, this man who transports people for a living, is that there's some kind of interference. I wonder if it's a kind of interference, like when you tell a friend about someone that you've been dating and you start a party and they end up making out with your date. I wonder if it's the kind of interference, like when your one true love calls you to tell you that they're getting on an airplane to the other side of the planet or on the other side of the world, but then they have a connecting flight, but it was just canceled, so they won't get to see you soon. But by the way, the phone call costs over $2 a minute from the other side of the planet. That's what you get for calling, or getting your hopes up. I wonder if it's a kind of interference, like when a week before you're supposed to stand up at a wedding, your significant other tells you that they want to break up with you. But they understand that you're a part of someone else's wedding. They'll tag along, act like your date to not cause any waves for you. I wonder if it's a kind of interference that when you're driving to see your parents, that you're stopped at an intersection and you see a car speeding toward you, your stopped car, so you turn the wheels so you crash won't kill the motorcyclist in front of you, and what they do drops you into a coma for weeks when you're in the hospital and they have to put a tube down your throat to breathe for you. That kind of interference. I wonder if it's a kind of interference, like when you're finally off on your own and you feel like you can trust people and someone gets you drunk enough to not fight back, when then they sexually get off on you. And then years later, you hear stories of rape rooms and fraternity basements, and the rooms have floors literally covered in dingy mattresses, in case a girl falls down as soon as she enters a room. That kind of interference. I wonder if it's a kind of interference you get after you questioned your gender preferences, starting a relationship with a few until one of them from a one-night stand gave you the human immunodeficiency virus. After you've contracted full-blown AIDS, you cocktail your way through the world and with anything that you can other than liquor, wondering how long you will live and wondering if you'll ever have a chance to raise kids. That kind of interference. But, often when you hear them say on Star Trek that there's some kind of interference, they continue on saying, I don't have a positive lock on the away team, which makes me think of the time when you wanted to find your love and some kind of interference keeps you away from your chance of finding your one true love. Thank you.